Okay, we're on Vezos Haberachah. Okay, so we got to prepare pasuk. We did pasuk Zayin, right? Okay. One more point on pasuk Zayin, and page 1114. Vezos li Yehuda vayomer Shema Hashem kol Yehuda. 2 lines from the top. V'lamo tevienu. Yodov rov lo ve'ezer mitzav v'yitiyah. So yesterday we spoke about the idea of Yehuda actually influencing Ruvain, and that was a merit. That was a merit for Yehuda. But I saw an interesting shot that says Vayomer Shema Hashem. Moshe Rabbeinu says at Tefillah, Vayomar Shema Hashem Kol Yehuda. Hear the voice of Yehuda. There's one very famous. Everybody there are plenty of chumashim, guys. Please take chumash. Everybody should have a chumash. There is one very famous voice. Page 1114. One very famous voice from the tribe of Yehuda. Does anybody know who it is? Very famous kol. Very famous voice from the tribe of Yehuda. Who's the most famous person from the tribe of Yehuda? Who's the most famous person from the tribe of Yehuda? Dovid HaMelech, right? And what did Dovid HaMelech give us? What was the gift he gave us? The most famous gift Dovid HaMelech gave us. Tehillim. When a Jew is in trouble, what does a Jew do? They say Tehillim. They say Tehillim. So the commentaries say, Shema Hashem Kol Yehuda. And Moshe Rabbeinu is saying a prayer, please Hashem, listen to the voice of Yehuda. Which voice of Yehuda? Take a chumash. Which voice of Yehuda? The voice of Yehuda that Dovid HaMelech provided us, which is Sefer Tehillim, which we say all the time. There are people who say the entire book of Tehillim every day. You don't need to share. Take it there, chumashim. Pick yourself up and get a chumash. It's not that they're far out of reach. So the Sefer Tehillim is the go-to book for the Jewish people when the Jewish people are in trouble. When you're not in trouble, some people say. There are people who break up Tehillim. Some people say the entire book of Tehillim every day. Some people say the entire book of Tehillim once a month. It's broken up into 30 sections. Some say once a week. It's broken into 7 sections. But it's always there. It's all good. It's a very, very, you have to study it. The Art Scroll has the interlinear Tehillim, which I recommend because the Tehillim is very cryptic and it's very, very difficult to understand without some commentary what it is that Dovid HaMelech is getting at. But that's the Kol Yehuda indicated over here. Okay. Now take a look at Perek Lamed Zayin Pasuk Ches. This is for the, this is Levi Amar, 4th line from the top. Oh, also 1114. 1114. Levi Amar, this is the bracha to the tribe of Levi. Moshe Rabbeinu speaking. Tumecha ve'urecha li'ishcha sidecha. Tumecha ve'urecha refers to the Urim v'Tumim. The Urim v'Tumim was the chest plate that the Kohen Gadol wore, and he had inside, the Hashem's name, and then it would light up. The Urim v'Tumim would light up when they consulted the chest plate. The letters on the stones would light up, and that's how they consulted and got answers. So he says, Tumecha ve'urecha. If everybody put away the technology, please, not in front of a chumash. Levi Amar Tumecha ve'urecha li'ishcha sidecha. Your Urim v'Tumim are given to the man of piety. Asher nisiso b'masa. You tested him at Masa. Tiriveu al mei Meriva. And you challenged him at the waters of Meriva. Now, I want you to pay attention carefully because there are 2 ideas here. The first one is a question. It's called the Urim v'Tumim. Somebody please, there are plenty of chumashim on the shelf. Please bring chumashim so that everybody who comes in has a chumash available. The chest plate it's called the Urim v'Tumim. Yet over here, the Torah, it reverses it. It's called Tumecha ve'urecha. Why does it call it Tumecha ve'urecha if it's normally called the Urim v'Tumim? The order is reversed over here. Urim, it shines, it enlightens. V'Tumim, it brings us the perfect answer, the complete answer. That's what the words mean. So why does it say Tumecha ve'urecha le'ishcha sidecha? the order is reversed, which also is there's no typos in the Torah. Why is the order reversed over here? Anybody have an idea? Why is the order reversed? So one of the Mefarshim says that Tumecha ve'urecha is referring to the tribe of Levi. The Kohen comes from the tribe of Levi. The Kohanim are from the tribe of Levi. Why does the Kohen or the Kohen Gadol, why did they, from the tribe of Levi, why are they selected to have the Kohen Gadol, who's going to be the one wearing the Urim v'Tumim? It's because of Tumecha, your perfection of moral character of the tribe of Levi, therefore you merited Tumecha v'Urecha. And that's why did you get the Urim v'Tumim? You got the Urim v'Tumim because of Tumim v'Urim. That what came first, the chicken or the Tumim? Right? The answer is that you showed moral character, the tribe of Levi, and that's why you merited to have this chest plate that you carried, the Urim, the Kohen that comes from the tribe of Levi. That means it's not. Sometimes in life you have to earn it. There has to be something that you earn, and we find that they earned it at the sin of the golden calf, when all the other Jewish people, the only tribe that was perfect, that nobody succumbed, was the tribe of Levi. They were the only ones who did not succumb to anybody. They had no fallout whatsoever at the, the golden calf. So therefore the Kohen is going to wear the Urim v'Tumim. That's idea number one. Idea number two is you have an interesting man named Aaron. Aaron was the first Kohen Gadol. And according to the Parsha, what Aaron does is punished with Moshe Rabbeinu. When did they get punished?
The rock.
Which rock? There were two rocks. The rock of Meribah, excellent. Aaron was punished at the rock. Who hit the rock? So why is Aaron punished? Moshe hit the rock and Aaron gets punished. Why did Aaron get punished? Some say he was punished for the ego, but according to the plain meaning, and certainly the commentaries, the Rishonim, Moshe hit the rock. God said, speak to the rock. Moshe hit the rock. Okay, neither are you going into Eretz Yisrael. What did I do? It's like when you put collective punishment in school. One kid talks, so you all lose your recess. Why should I lose recess? Because this guy talked. You encouraged him. I didn't encourage him. I didn't have anything. What?
He was the tribe of Levi.
But why should Aaron get punished for Moshe hitting the rock? Because he didn't do anything. Oh. Now, if you take a look at the first time, look at 1 second. You're right, but let's take it a little further. There's a place called Massa. There's Massa in Meribah. So Meribah is exactly what Shaya says. That's a second rock incident. But there was the first rock. When they first came out of Egypt, when they first came to the desert, they also needed water. What did Hashem say to Moshe to do at the first rock? He said, hit it. And he hit it. That was good. What did he say to the second rock? Speak. And he hit it. Now, one of the ideas is because, if you take, they use the analogy of spanking a child. When you spank him the first time, he gets cooperative. The second time, all you got to do is talk. You want another one? Right? And then the kids, what do you call it? That's like the father says to his son, didn't I promise you that if you're a naughty boy, you're going to get it? And didn't you promise me you're going to be a good boy? The kid says to his father, yeah, I broke my promise, so you can break your promise. So if Moshe read the first time, you hit the rock. The second time, you're supposed to upgrade and only speak to the rock. That's a higher level miracle. It's like sleight of hand. Any of these magicians, sleight of hand, as soon as there's physical contact, it's less impressive. If you could do something without physical, like those guys who, with the mind, like Uri Geller, these guys who could bend spoons with their mind. When you're not touching it, and something happens, or at least I didn't see you touch it, that's more impressive. Because these sleight of hand guys, as soon as they make contact, they can do anything. As soon as they put a hand on your shoulder, goodness knows what you'll be lucky to stay with your belt by the time these guys finish with you. But so the rock, if you hit the rock, it looks like a little bit more of human intervention. Talking to the rock is detachment, which is a higher level. Okay, fine. That we're all good with. There's only one problem here. The first time Moshe Rabbeinu hit the rock, and he did what he was supposed to do. The second time he hit the rock, it wasn't what he was supposed to do, and now Aaron gets punished. Why? The answer is that Aaron had two tests. One test which he passed, and the other test he did not pass. The first time that Moshe used Aaron's staff to hit something, take that back. The first time Aaron's staff was used to hit something was when? What do you say? The Nile, correct. Aaron took his staff and he hit the water. He hit the dirt in Egypt. He hit the Nile. He touched the Nile. He touched the dirt. Aaron used the staff. All of a sudden, they come out of Mitzrayim, and Moshe Rabbeinu says to Ake, can I use your staff, bro? Can I use your staff? What do you want it for? Well, I'm going to hit the rock. We're going to produce some water. Now, if you were Aaron at that point, what would you have said? Or might you have said? Like, why can't I do it? He passed that test because he didn't say anything. Now he has another test. Moshe Rabbeinu was about to hit the rock the second time. What's the test? You should have said something. That's the most difficult test in life. The most difficult test in life is sometimes you got to talk and sometimes you don't. That's the most difficult test. You're right. That's the most difficult. You're not in a bar. That's the most difficult test in life. The most difficult test in life is that to turn it on and turn it off. It's one of the most difficult tests in life. I mentioned to you that one of the most difficult things that a person has to do is where let's say you're the principal of a school. And as a principal, you have to carry yourself a certain way. You may have to crack the whip a little bit. Then you come home and you're a father. It's a completely different hat. It better be a different hat. I once asked the kid if his father was a principal of a school. I said to the kid, do you want to be a principal? So he said, no way. I said, why not? He said, you can't imagine how hard it is to grow up in the principal's office. I mean, his father was a principal at home also. You have to know how to turn it on. You have to know when to say it, when not to say it. I told you, high-ranking military people have very high rates of divorce. Because when you're a colonel in the army, you give orders. And anybody who is on a lower rank than you, they could talk until you say, that's an order, Lieutenant. If they say one more word at that point, they'll be court-martialed. You can't come home and say, dinner at 1800 hours, woman. It's not going to work. Because she's going to say, take the garbage at 1805 hours, Colonel. Right? Now what? And she outranks you, by the way. She outranks you. I grew up, my father, every time I'd ask my father all the time, I'd say, Dad, I'm just a buck private, ask the general. That was the standard, that's how I grew up. Yeah. And that you're outranked. You're outranked and overruled. So here, Aaron has a test. It's a very difficult test. You have to know when to talk, when not to talk. You have to know when, and it's not only by talking. You have to know when to take action and when not to take action. Should you punish your child or not? But maybe sometimes you shouldn't, sometimes you shouldn't. Sometimes you restrain yourself. And so on and so forth. That's a very difficult test. Okay, take a look at the next passage. Test. What was the praise of Levi? Ha'omer, 5 lines from the top. Ha'omer la'avivu la'ima lo re'isiv, said to his father and his mother, I don't see them. Ves echav lo hikir, did not recognize his brother. As banav lo yoda. Ki shamru imrascha, they kept your word. Ubrischa yinsar, they were faithful to your covenant. Now this is referring to the sin of the golden calf. Once again, we're the tribe of Levi when Moshe Rabbeinu said, okay, people got to be executed now because they worshiped idols. And Levi went, it says that relatives of theirs, now these were not direct relatives because no one from the tribe of Levi, full relatives rather, because no one from the tribe of Levi sinned. But what about a half-brother who was a Yisraelite or a stepfather or a stepmother, all these people who were not full-fledged Levies, or a son who was from, a stepson, whoever it was, and the tribe of Levi took none of that into consideration. If they were guilty, they were executed. That was a praise for the tribe of Levi. No nepotism. No nepotism here. You're guilty, you're guilty. I don't care if you're a half-brother, a full, whatever you are, a half-son, whatever you are. That's the praise. That's what it says. He says, I don't know my father, I don't know my mother, I don't know my brother. Meaning, I'm not blinded by the family relationship. I carry out what I have to do. As unpleasant as it may be, I carry it out. That's the plain meaning of the pasuk. The Chafetz Chaim used to say that ha'omer la'aviv u'le'ima lo re'isiv, I don't see my parents. The Chafetz Chaim was in Europe. American boys, talk about in the 30s, 20s, 30s, who used to get on a ship and they would leave America, the creature comforts of America in the 20s, and they would go off to study in yeshivas in Europe. You go to the Mir Yeshiva, they would go to the Slobodki Yeshiva, and you're talking about these small villages in Europe where they had the Mir Yeshiva in the 20s, they had one light bulb in the house, and they had an outhouse. and they had some sort of oven that it was very primitive compared to, listen, America in the 20s was compared to what we are today is also what we would consider primitive. I was in Israel in the 60s. You don't know what primitive is. I was in Israel in the 80s. You still don't know what primitive is. But at the end of the day, it was very primitive. When I got here in the 80s, when we moved here in the 80s, we didn't have a phone. There was one phone in our neighborhood, and 7 neighbors were hooked up to one phone. We ran wires on the phone. Every time the phone rang, hello, 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 hello. It was good because then you got to hear some good stuff when it was meant for somebody else. But it was always, it was very primitive. It was very, very primitive, a very primitive way. I didn't say it was mutter. I just said it was good. But, then again, other things that are forbidden are also good. But the what do you call it? It was very primitive. So they went from America to Europe, where it was extremely, extremely primitive. And the Chafetz Chaim, in praise of those yeshiva boys who went from America, and they got on a ship. In those days, you went away. It wasn't like a summer program. You went to the Yeshiva, you were away from home for 5 years. That was a trip. You went away for 5 years. It wasn't that you went there, you came back and forth. You got on a plane, jumped back and forth for your second cousin's bar mitzvah, like people do nowadays. You got on a ship, you said goodbye to your family, and maybe you saw them again, and maybe you didn't see them again. If you did, it was 5 years later. So the Chafetz Chaim said this pasuk, he applied this in praise to them, that they were willing to pick up and leave the creature comforts and come out to Europe to study Torah for no reason other than studying Torah. So I want to tell you that this applies to every one of you. This pasuk applies to every one of you because you've also picked up, and as good as Ohr Somayach is with all the 5-star accommodations, and as good as Israel is with all its 5-star accommodations, where you came from is better. On a physical level, I have very little doubt that where you came from is better. On a creature comfort level, there's no question about it. But something was important to you, and you picked up, and this applies to you also. You picked up, you are sacrificing for Torah. You may not feel it on a day-to-day level. You certainly don't feel like the people from America went to Europe and had to use an outhouse in winter. But you are. It's a sacrifice, number one. But I think it's even more than that. I think that you have more of a sacrifice because many of you, it's not like, I came to Israel. I made some life changes, but I had a lot of support from my parents. My parents were very good about it, about being supportive. Not all Baal Tshuvas do. To the contrary, in many cases, you're fighting with your parents. And you're not fighting physically, but you have, I'm sure that there's some friction, and there might be tension. Why are you in yeshiva, and when do you graduate, and what is it? Studying Talmud is not really the best use of your time or your mind or whatever the objections are. And you're the Omer Lavi V'li Yosef. You have to understand that that's a credit for you. You have to understand that's also a sacrifice. And do you know that Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, Zichrono Livracha, he once spoke at Ohr Somayach. Ohr Somayach had an Israeli division. He had an Israeli division. And Rabbi Ovadia Yosef came and spoke to the Israeli division of Ohr Somayach. And he said to them, this was Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, was the Gadol Hador for the Sephardic Gadol Hador, who was an absolute walking encyclopedia of the entire Torah. And Rabbi Ovadia Yosef got up and he said to them, gentlemen, I just want to tell you something. It's an honor to be in your presence in this world, because in the world to come, I'm probably not going to have that merit. That's what Rabbi Ovadia said to them. Because to a certain extent, that's true. If you don't have to fight, who knows the difficulty and the challenge of having to fight with family is a very, very difficult thing. So you should know that you have a credit that Ha'omer la'aviv u'le'imo lo re'isiv. That you have to disregard. Sometimes you have to disregard your parents in a respectful way. You always have to be respectful, by the way. You can never do anything insulting. You can never do anything insulting. But sometimes you have to make your own life choices. And one of the choices that the halacha says you're allowed to make is that a person is allowed to study Torah regardless of the parents' objections. On the other hand, it's important that you have to, and you also have an obligation to maintain a respectful relationship. You could disagree without being disagreeable. And you have to maintain a respectful relationship. The second question I was asked when I started working at Ohr Somayach years ago, second question I was asked was a young man who told me that he became a Baal Tshuva. He hated his father. They had it was not a good relationship, to say the least. And he wanted to know if after his father dies, he cannot say Kaddish. That was the question he asked me. They don't prepare you for these things in rabbi school. And so I sent him, I did the smart thing. I just sent him to a halachic authority. And, the relationship soured. The relationship was soured before he became a Baal Tshuva, but the relationship was soured. The end of the story was that he took a hatchet and he turned his father's Lexus into a convertible, which involved the police department and other, which was not approved by rabbinic, what do you call it? So I tell you, things weren't so good. Okay, take a look at Pasuk Yud. Skip on to Pasuk Yud Beis now. Now we go to the tribe of Binyamin. Le Binyamin Amar, 1116, page 1116, second line from the top. Le Binyamin Amar, Yedid Hashem Yishkon Levetach Alav, the beloved one of God. How does he translate it? Hashem's beloved dwells securely by him. Chofef Olav Kol Hayom Uvein Kseifav Shachein. He hovers above him at all day and rests between his shoulders. Okay. We know one thing about the tribe of Binyamin. Just 20 minutes away from here is the Temple Mount. About 20 minutes. I don't know how fast you can walk it, but the Temple Mount is right here. Whose portion is that Temple Mount where the base of Mikdash was built? Whose portion is that in? It's in the portion of the tribe of Binyamin. And the Gemara says that Binyamin, when they were looking for the location of where to build the Beis HaMikdash, so they chose an area that was high, but there were slightly higher on the sides. And it's described as being between the shoulders, because the best part of the ox is the part that's between the shoulders. That's how the Gemara describes it, where the Beis HaMikdash is between the shoulders geographically. Whatever exactly that means. Now the question becomes, why did Binyamin merit to have the Beis HaMikdash placed in his portion? Why was the Beis HaMikdash placed in Binyamin's portion as opposed to anybody? What merit, special merit did Binyamin have? What's that? The Gemara says he was one of 4 people who never sinned. That's true. There were 4 people who died sinless. There were 4 people who never sinned. I'm the 5th, but there are 4 people who never sinned, right? What's that? Quiet. When was he quiet? Okay. We're doing well. He was quiet in the sale of Yosef. He knew his brother had been sold. The other brothers sinned. They did not have the compassion. Binyamin knew that his brother, remember, Yosef and Binyamin were full brothers. Yosef was a half-brother with the other tribes. Binyamin knew that Yosef had sinned. The brothers swore him to secrecy. And he wouldn't blow the whistle on him. Now, the truth of the matter is that if you ever know that somebody has been sold, generally you are allowed to tell. It's definitely a display of inconsideration to sell people. But why didn't he tell? The commentaries say because he didn't want to embarrass his brothers. There was a certain sensitivity. He was sworn to secrecy, but there was a certain sensitivity that Binyamin had. He certainly wasn't involved in the sale of Yosef. The brothers were involved in the sale. There's a certain element of cruelty there. They had plenty of rationalization for it, but there is an element of cruelty. What's the Beis HaMikdash? The Beis HaMikdash is mercy. We go to the Beis HaMikdash, and this is what Yom Kippur is, gentlemen. There's a misconception. Yom Kippur is the happiest day of the year. Do you know that? I didn't say it's the easiest day of the year. I said it's the happiest day of the year. It's the happiest day of the year. The happiest day of the year is the day that you get to go and have the entire slate wiped clean. A person could be condemned to who knows what. Imagine a guy who's in prison, condemned to death, and he comes to court, and we tell him, if you plead your case properly, you're going to get off the hook completely, and you go home today. And he pleads his case, and he's ruled, you're free to go. That's a happy day. And he didn't eat a morsel that day. He was so focused on pleading his case, he didn't eat a morsel. Yom Kippur is a happy day. It's a merciful day. It's not a day of sadness like Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av is a day of mourning. Yom Kippur is a day of joy. That's why we eat before Yom Kippur. Why are we eating before Yom Kippur? You know, the Gemara says that if you eat on the 9th, it's as if you fasted on the 9th and on the 10th. If you eat on the 9th and you fast on the 10th, it's as if you fasted both days. Because instinctively we understand that fasting is a certain merit that we have. I mean, let's face it, I'm better at eating than fasting, in case you were wondering. I'm much better at eating. I practice, I've perfected it, and I'm better at eating than fasting. Yet if you eat on the 9th, you get the merit of having fasted on the 9th and 10th. Why is that? Why is that? What's it? No, there were never 2 days of Yom Kippur. The only ones who kept 2 days of Yom Kippur were the Mir Yeshiva when they went to Shanghai. The Mir Yeshiva when they went to, in the 1940s when they ran away from Europe and they got to Japan. When they got to Japan, there was a question about the international date line. It wasn't clear which day is Shabbos and which day is Yom Kippur. There were actually there were different. Some poskim said Saturday in Japan is Saturday in Eretz Yisrael. Some poskim said no, Sunday. And so there were the difference of opinion. Now some followed Rav the Chazon Ish and some followed Rav Tukachinsky. There were students of the Mir Yeshiva that fasted both days on Yom Kippur. It was only the first time. It was after they were that they were in Kobe, Japan, and then they went to Shanghai, China, and China wasn't a problem. But in Japan, they were across the international date line. So I know a guy who's a kashrus supervisor who works a lot in Japan. He's actually taught himself Japanese, which is ranked as the #1 most difficult language in the world. He taught himself Japanese, but the Japanese don't know that he knows Japanese. He's a kashrus supervisor. He wants to know what they're talking about without them knowing that he knows what they're talking about. So he's in Japan. He often goes to Japan. There are factories there, but for Shabbos, he then flies to China. Because in Japan, he has an issue with the date line. So he flies to China to keep Shabbos. Then it's smooth. It's the same Shabbos that we have. It's Saturday. And in Japan, it's still it's not clear which day is actually Shabbos. Now, that aside, how did I get onto that? What were you talking about? What? Yom Kippur, right. Oh, well, how did we get onto that?
Why is fasting on?
Oh, why is fasting? All right, thank you very much. Yeah, why is fasting? See, I was talking about foods. I got the kashrut supervision. Why is fasting on the 9th? The answer is most people who going to court, you'd be pretty nervous. You know, how did you feel in school when you had to take midterms, going into a big test? You have a big appetite right before the test? You did not. You didn't have any appetite at all. You probably ate some energy drink. And that was about it. After the test, then you eat. After the test, then you eat. Right, but you didn't have it beforehand. We go into Yom Kippur like this could be nerve-wracking over here. I'm like, whoa. That we're able to eat. You know, imagine a guy going into surgery. The guy knows that tomorrow he's got like a serious surgery. You think he'd have an appetite the day before? Not much appetite. I once read about a guy, I think it was Gary Gilmore, who was going to be executed. So they give you your last you get a last meal. Do you know where that comes from, by the way? Now that we're onto the subject, not that anybody. Do you know where why they give him a last meal, which actually has a source in the Gemara? It actually has a source in the Gemara. The Gemara says that Reish Lakish was once captured by cannibals, and they asked him for a last wish. He said, "Yeah, I'd like to take my sack and give each one of you a smack with it." So they said, "Okay." So he loaded it up with lead. And then he went around and he killed each one of them. He smacked them and he escaped. That's what the Gemara says in Gittin. The Gemara says on page 47, Reish Lakish smacked each one of them. So you go, why did they give them their last offer? The answer is it's to soothe their conscience. To soothe, we're about to kill you and we're going to eat you, which is also regarded in most places as impolite. And since we're going to do that to you, and we want to give you, that's where the last wish for the execution is, that we should feel that we'll give you one before we kill you. So I just remember that this guy, Gary Gilmore, can you imagine a guy, I remember reading this, what did he ask for in his last meal? Who could eat in a moment like that? Honestly, who could eat? And I remember I was reading, I think it was in Time magazine, he asked for fried chicken and pizza. I remember I got queasy when I read it. I'm reading this article about the execution and they're going to take him and this is what he's asking for at a time like this. Who's got an appetite? That's what you're thinking about, fried chicken and pizza when your guy's about to go? If we're able to eat on the 9th, that shows that we have confidence that we're going to come out good on the 10th. That confidence is a merit for us, that we're confident in God's mercy. that you go to Yom Kippur and you realize, hey, we're about to get an atonement over here. We're going to get cleaned up. I'm in a good mood. You want to watch? You want to see what a good man? Let me have another drumstick. I'll show you what a good mood I'm in. That's the indication that we're what do you call it? That's the indication that we have confidence in God's mercy. That's a merit for us. The Beis Hamikdash is where the person didn't have Aveira. You brought a sacrifice to God, and you were forgiven. You were atoned for. I can't have that element of cruelty of the brothers selling Yosef mixed in with the Beis Hamikdash, and therefore the Beis Hamikdash is built in Binyamin's portion. That's one of the explanations. The other idea is Binyamin was the youngest son. When all the brothers were out of the house, who did Yaakov Avinu have to lean on at that point? He only had Binyamin to lean on. And before Shem explained, when you lean on somebody, you kind of lean on his shoulders. You can imagine Yaakov walking along, leaning on Binyamin's shoulders. He was the son who took care of him in the old age. Since he allowed his father to lean on his shoulders, so the Father in heaven says, I'm going to put my Beis Hamikdash in your shoulders, which is the Beis Hamikdash over here, which is what's called, the Gemara describes as it's in the shoulders of the ox. That's the Beis Hamikdash. That's why Binyamin gets it in his portion. Okay. Now take a look at Yosef. This is the one I wanted to get to today, but I don't know if we're going to have time completely. Uli Yosef Amar Mevoreches Hashem Artzo. Yosef's land will be blessed. Bimeged Shemayim Mitol. Mitahomer Vezos Tachatz. How does he do? The heavenly bounty of dew, and with the deep waters crouching below, the water beneath the earth which keeps the soil fertile. Take a look at Rashi for 1 second. On Pasuk Yud Gimel. It's about a little past halfway on the right side. If you find it, please show the person next to you. Everybody see that? Mevoreches Hashem Artzo. Right column, about 10 lines from the bottom. Mevoreches Hashem, his land is blessed. Shelo haisa benachlas hashvotim. There was not among the portion of the tribes, Eretz Melea kol tuv ke'artzo shel Yosef. Brought down from the Sifri, which is the Medrash on Dvarim, that the land of Yosef was the most productive land of all the tribes. And the question becomes why? Why was Yosef's land, exactly how was productive? Rashi brings down that the fruits and everything else. Why? Why Yosef? Why did Yosef merit that his land should be the most productive land? So there are two approaches here. Number one, what did Yosef do when he became the viceroy of Egypt? What's that? He provided for everybody. Yosef was a provider. And as a provider, you are now paid back that your land will provide. You were a provider. God doesn't overlook anything, gentlemen. You provided, now you're going to be provided for in the best way. Number one. Number two, you have to understand where Yosef was. He was 17 when he got to Egypt, when he went through this test. He's a 17-year-old, red-blooded 17-year-old, being chased around by Mrs. Potiphar. Now just imagine a red-blooded 17-year-old at the campus of the University of Arizona being chased around. And Egypt was worse. The moral level, the depravity of Egypt was worse than American college campuses, maybe not Wisconsin, but than most American college campuses, if you could possibly. Wisconsin was always ranked number one as a party school. And Esquire magazine, when they ranked the top 10 party schools, Wisconsin was automatically given number one. And the ranking only began after that, after Wisconsin. It was like in the NBA, who was the best player besides Michael? That's how it worked. Besides Michael, then the question only became after that. After that, then we'll talk. But that was a given. So, yes, better than Kobe. Yes. Yeah. I don't want to hear from you, Jeremy. I don't want to hear a word, Jeremy. And LeBron who? LeBron who? Sit down. You're getting me upset. 3 days before Yom Kippur, you're going to have to apologize. Though LeBron did accomplish something Michael never accomplished 6 times. He lost in the finals. So we'll give it to you. We'll give that to you, Sam. The bottom line is Yosef's in Egypt in a den of iniquity, and he exhibits a self-control that nobody's ever exhibited in life before, in the world before. More than that, He then becomes the viceroy, and he's got the entire country at his beck and call. In a land that, what would you expect to see? What kind of behavior would you see? Yeah, he could have easily turned into a new Putin with a palace and a hockey rink underneath. He could have had it all. And what does Yosef do? He spends his entire 80-year career as the viceroy of Egypt only caring for other people. You've demonstrated self-control. I can trust your land over here with self-control. It's not going to ruin you. Sometimes people, if people become rich, should happen to me soon, say amen. If people become rich, sometimes, it ruins them. They turn into a different person. It destroys them. Yosef, with everything, still maintains that self-control. And that's why Yosef is the ideal for us when we think of self-control. There was a rabbi, you've heard of the Panovich Yeshiva? Famous Panovich Yeshiva. Okay, so there was a rabbi, Reb Dovid Povarsky, was one of the Rosh Yeshivas of the Panovich Yeshiva. And he once broke his arm or his elbow or something. So the doctors said they would have to put his arm in a cast. So Reb Povarsky said, I don't want you to put a cast on my arm. So they said to him, but you can't move your arm. He said, so I won't move my arm. So they started laughing. They said, Rabbi, you can't move your arm at all. He says, I won't move my arm at all. He said, Rabbi, you can't move your arm. You can't move your arm when you're sleeping either. He says, I won't move it when I'm sleeping. And we think to ourselves, oh, I'm sleeping? When I sleep, I'm retired from life for the next 6 or 8 hours. I go to sleep. Sometimes you wake up, you go to sleep, and you move around so much, you wake up with your head in the other direction. You get up on the other side of the room. Self-control means that the person's got, if you ever watch big rabbis, real big rabbis, there's very little movement. When they talk to you, there's a lot of, it's all slow, under control. There isn't any of this. Very little of that. Maybe while they're davening. But not while they're doing anything else. Total self-control. That's what the Torah is about. Torah is about self-control. That's the theme of the Torah. The ultimate in self-control is Yosef. There was I can tell you, there was one other incident. Yeah, this was a good one. There was Odessa, Ohr Somayach at one point had a branch in Odessa. What's that? Odessa in the Black Sea in the Ukraine. Close though. Am I hungry? I'm hungry. Yeah. So they had a branch in Odessa, which they actually called Ordessa, Ohr Somayach, Ordessa. Yeah. So they had a branch in Odessa, and a visiting Rav showed up in Odessa. They were there for a while, and there was an older Russian Jew there living there, a Jewish man, and this Rav asked him about the hechsher on the meat, the supervision on the meat in town. And he said, yeah, the meat is a very reliable supervision. So he asked the question, which many people ask when they ask about supervision. His next question is, do you eat it? That's what he asked the old man. He said, no, I personally don't eat it. I said, why not? He said, that's a perfect supervision. The kashrus is impeccable. The reason I don't eat it is because I grew up here. And because I grew up here, there was no kosher meat available. So I became a more or less a starch and vegetable diet. Not by choice, by need. By necessity, there was no kosher meat available. Now there is kosher meat available. But I've also from Russia, and every country has a national sport. In England, it's soccer. In America, it's baseball. In Russia, it's revolutions. In Russia, that's the national sport of Russia, is revolutions. Right now, there's kosher meat available. I've trained myself not to eat meat. The kosher meat's available. What's going to be? I don't know what's going to be in another few years. Maybe it'll be another revolution. It won't be available. And then I'm going to have another battle to not eat. I don't know if I'll overcome that battle a second time, to not eat non-kosher meat. Therefore, I choose not to eat the kosher meat now. That's the self-control. The self-control. So I told you once there was by the way, Hugh Hefner. I don't know if you've heard of Hugh Hefner. Hugh Hefner was probably the antithesis of every Musar book ever written. And Hugh Hefner, who was the whatever, and he got to a point, I read once, he got to a point in life where he said, now this is a man who was living with absolutely no self-control. in any area. And he got to a point where he said, I have no pleasure left in life except soup. That's pretty sad. That's what happens to a person who's out of control. That's what a person got. I remember I read it and I was also got queasy. That was the second thing that made me queasy in one day. I don't know, whether it was the same day, whatever it was. That's what happens when you live without self-control. So there's an apocryphal story, but it's a very, very powerful lesson. There's a guy decides he's going to rob a bank. Wasn't me. He decides he's going to rob a bank. So he puts on a police uniform. He figures that with a police uniform, he can walk past the security guard in the bank. Nobody's going to suspect him. So he puts on a police uniform, and he walks into the bank, and he walks up to the teller, and he pulls out a gun. He says, okay, start filling the bag with money. And he's in a police uniform. There's a guy behind him wearing jeans and a T-shirt, and he happens to be an undercover cop. He pulls out his gun and puts it in his ribs, and he says, okay, listen, I'm a cop, you're under arrest. Oh, brother, just when you didn't want to run into him. Okay, so he takes out his handcuffs, and he handcuffs the criminal to himself, and he starts walking down the block to the police station. As they're walking down the block, this undercover cop's next door neighbor is coming, walking towards him. Now, he knew that his neighbor did something. He never knew exactly what he did. And here he sees his neighbor in his jeans and T-shirt is handcuffed to a policeman. So the neighbor comes in, the neighbor kind of looks at him, he's looking at the cop and looking at it. He says, no, Bill, this isn't what you think. You see, I'm actually an undercover cop, and he's a criminal. He was trying to rob the bank. And the policeman looks at him, and he figures, listen, this guy's about to put me away. I'm not going to make his life easy. He says to the neighbor, look at me and look at him. Who do you think's the criminal? Who do you think is the cop? And he says, no, Bill, I'm telling you, I'm an undercover policeman. He says, come on, are you going to believe that? Look at this. So he finally realizes there's only one way to prove it. And one way to determine it. He says to the neighbor, whoever's got the key to the handcuffs, he's the guy who's in control. He's the one who's doing am I pulling him or he's pulling me? So he pulls out the key, says, I've got the key to the handcuffs. I'm pulling him, he's not pulling me. So we are being pulled. We're being pulled constantly by the evil inclination, by the Yetzer Hara is constantly pulling us. We're pulling him. It's a tug of war constantly. Who's in control? Is he controlling us or we're controlling him? The one who's got the key is in control. Who's making the decisions? Is he making the decision or am I making the decisions? That's the ultimate in self-control. That's why Yosef, who was the ultimate holder of the key of self-control, he was the one holding the key. That's why Yosef is the one. His land is blessed because we could trust him with it. Somebody else, I don't know if I could trust you with all that prosperity. I don't know what's going to do to you. Yosef has a track record. Yosef, and therefore his tribe, is a track record of being in control. Therefore, we could give them the prosperity. Okay. To be continued.